Morning, guys. Hey, well, my internet is out this morning, and sometimes that's a good thing because it allows you to browse through your Steve Reeves collection and make a video for you guys. So, story time. This is a very rare poster book by Milton Moore. I had never heard of this before, the poster book. It's huge. It measures 14.5 inches tall and 10 inches wide. So we're going to read through this, but look at the cover. Now you may have seen that pose before. 1948, Mr. World holding the Sevres vase, and Steve's hair looks a little bit different to me. What do you think? Very rare. I'd never heard of this poster book before, so I was fascinated. I have to thank my good friend Barry. I'm not going to mention his last name because I don't know if he wants to be identified, but Barry is a huge Steve Reeves fan. He is a chiropractor, and he is from the California area and now lives elsewhere. Barry has an interesting story. He called up Steve Reeves in the mid-70s. I'm just going to give you the short version. And he was invited to meet Steve and be trained by Steve. How's that? So Barry and I have become friends over the year, and this poster book by Milton Moore is from Barry. Alright. Reeves stands head and shoulders above the many lumpy, bumpy, overgreased, ultra-veined, goofy, disproportionate, unkempt bodybuilders who have attempted but failed miserably to fill his shoes. Wow, Milton T. Moore Jr. You'd think he was talking about today's bodybuilder, but this poster book had to have been written in the mid to late 70s. It had to have come out, I'm guessing, prior to Milton Moore's book, One of a Kind and A Tribute. So you'd think by that quote he was talking about today's bodybuilders. Interesting. It only got worse, didn't it? The first published picture of Steve appeared in Your Physique, a bodybuilding periodical put out by an ambitious new publisher named Joseph E. Weider. The editor at the time captioned the picture, "You could have knocked us down with a feather when we first saw this picture of newcomer 18-year-old Steve Reeves. From this time on, the magnificence of Steve Reeves has touched countless thousands, possibly millions of fellows, young and old, who have found his combined good looks and perfectly formed physique the ultimate in masculine perfection. There's no doubt that Steve Reeves is the hero of the muscle world. True, he was blessed with a near-perfect basic structure, and he also had a well-formed face that portrayed a handsomeness that in turn attracted girls from just about everywhere he went." Reeves was born on January 21st, 1927. He's actually born in 1926. In the town of Glasgow, Montana, he was brought up in the farming area and was taught to ride almost before he could walk. Tragically, his father was killed in a farm accident when he was still a youngster. From then on, Steve, being an only child, was raised by his mother. He moved to Oakland, California at the age of 10 and started to become interested in strength and bodybuilding when he was 15. One of his school buddies invited Steve to wrist wrestle and beat him easily. Actually, Reeves could beat most of the other school kids because he was a natural. But whenever he took on this one guy, he became helpless and always lost. Then one day, Reeves went round to this fellow's house. The fellow's name was Joe, And lo and behold, the guy had a barbell set. He was a weight trainer. Well, needless to say, Steve's eyes opened wide. From that time on, he too became a weight training enthusiast. His progress rate was enormous. He packed on pounds and pounds of handsome muscle. At 18, he went from 163 to 193 in 3 months. Pretty soon, he became the most gazed at lad in the school passageways, and more specifically at the beach when he stripped for a swim. Girls openly sought his company, and in spite of his obvious popularity with the young people in his high school, Steve was noted, among other things, for his shyness. When he was 17, Steve visited Los Angeles on vacation and was extremely surprised to find that people noticed him in the street. He did look pretty impressive already, being over 6 feet and weighing almost 200 pounds of shapely muscle, but it was his overall appearance and poise, and not a little his handsome face, that made even the movie-oriented Los Angeles populace sit up and take notice when Steve walked the streets. Several times on this vacation from Oakland, he was asked by strangers, "Are you a movie star?" A question to which Steve would shrug his mammoth shoulders in bewilderment and reply, "No, I'm not." However, if nothing else, these comments stayed in his mind, and in fact, the complete episode was to be repeated about the time when Steve was preparing for the 1947 Mr. America contest. He was 21 years old, and the same question kept popping up with almost annoying regularity. In trains, on the beach, even while sitting in restaurants, people from all walks of life, so impressed with the striking physical and facial superiority of the youthful bodybuilder, would repeat the embarrassing question, "Are you a movie star?" Pretty soon, this set Reeves to think, well, if they think I look like a movie star, maybe I should become one. Steve won the 1947 Mr. America, just outing Eric Peterson, who many believe lost by virtue of having a pimply skin. Actually, Peterson was an extremely rugged physique man, but even so was no match for the perfect physical proportions of Reeves. The following year saw the youngest Mr. America journeying to London, England for the Mr. Universe contest. He was beaten by fellow American John C. Grimmick. The British judges had a difficult task in deciding the winner of this contest by virtue of the fact that Reeves and Grimmick had very different types of physiques. Steve's body was typified by the long, rangy look, narrow waist, sweeping back, shallow chest, and extremely broad shoulders. Grimmick, in contrast, had a densely packed physique, which, although not as handsome as his taller competitor, carried more compactness and a feeling of power. In addition, it was observed that Mr. Grimmick turned out triumphant on that August day when the two were dead heated and asked to pose again for the judges. Reeves went through the same routine, whereas Grimmick gave a totally new posing display and even finished up his posing routine with a somersault from the rostrum, landing dramatically into the splits position. This undoubtedly affected the ultimate decision, and Grimmick was announced the winner. Interestingly enough, Steve was the first to take the mic after learning of his defeat. "There is," he said approvingly, "only one John Grimmick." Before returning to the States, Steve journeyed to Cannes on the French Riviera in the company of Oscar Heidenstein and George Greenwood. I didn't know George Greenwood went with those guys. I'll have to research that. There he entered the Mr. World contest and won easily. His prize included a valuable Sèvres antique vase, and after the winning ceremony had been performed, young Steve amused the more experienced Oscar Heidenstam by lightheartedly questioning, "What do I do with this vase?" Oscar had to explain that it was probably worth in excess of several $100s. In March 1949, the Mr. USA contest was held in Los Angeles. Reeves surprisingly placed third behind John Grimmick and Clancy Ross. His fave couldn't believe the decision. Others claimed the mighty Mr. America was finished. "Reeves is on the way out," they exclaimed. However, amidst the howls of detractors, after an extended layoff, Steve whipped himself into top shape and entered the 1950 Mr. USA contest. He won. Later that same year, he journeyed to London, England for the NABBA Mr. Universe contest and beat none other than the fabulous Britisher Reg Park. With no more worlds to conquer on the physical culture scene, Steve announced his retirement from contests and started to seek out a career as an actor. Okay, I'm going to skip over to this area, which I thought was interesting. Hope you do too. It's more about what Steve is doing with his days. And we'll start here and read a little more, then we'll look at the pictures. Currently, his days are spent on his small ranch outside San Diego and California. A typical Steve Reeves days is as follows. On awakening, he takes his boxer for a walk of a mile or two and then returns for a hearty breakfast. He then goes horse riding for a couple of hours until lunchtime, and then he has lunch and a nap in the early afternoon. Later, he watches TV or goes to the theater. This is what could be called a rest day. At other times, Steve is extremely busy because he has 101 other interests, all of which consume his time. Half the year is spent in Lucerne, Switzerland. Here his life is somewhat more hectic. He spends a great deal of time water skiing, playing tennis, didn't know that, riding, skiing, and running. In addition, he is a great camera buff, owning a Hasselblad and a 35mm Leica, both recognized as being among the world's best cameras. In fact, some of his photographs have won top awards in photographic contests. He also won scores of awards for his Morgan horses, which he breeds as a hobby on his ranch. Now, I didn't know that his photos had won top awards in photographic contests. But I did know he had a 35mm Leica camera because this is it right here. Wow, huh? This is Steve's camera, Leica, leather case. Let's see here. Doing this one-handed. Bear with me. Alright, let's open it up and put the camera down for a minute. This is the camera that is referenced in this poster book. I don't know what year it is. I don't know if it works. It's on my list of things to do. Here on the lens area it says Leitz Elmar, L-E-I-T-Z, 35mm. And if you go on Google, you'll find that that is also known as Leica, or it used to be Leica, or it used to be Leitz Elmer. I'm not sure. But this was his camera. I'm guessing it works. It probably just needs a good cleaning. Okay, here's the camera out of the leather case. Just unscrew this little doodad from the bottom here, and then it easily comes out. Cameras have changed, haven't they? Now we just use our phones. Although my wife has a 35mm Nikon that she loves, so it just depends. So there's a little piece of history, guys. Steve Reeves' personal Leica 35mm camera. I don't have any pictures that he took with this, but you never know. Someday I might. Amazing. Here's the case. We actually have a camera collection of old cameras, and so when I got this, I thought, well, this fits perfectly with that collection. Of course, this is Hercules' camera, so it stands out a little bit. Alright, well, I'm going to show you the pictures now, and once again, this is a 14-inch tall, 14.5-inch tall and 10-inch wide poster book. It's heavy paper. Alright, here he is in one of his competitions. Here's John Grimmick sitting in the throne. Here are the trophies here. Classic shot right there. You know, Steve's physique was like art, and it's kind of hard to explain, but when you see good art, you just know it and you appreciate it. And his chest looks pretty thick here. Abs look good also. These are the Tony Lanza photographs in Chicago, 1947. Here we are on the set of Hercules with his co-star, Silva. You don't see this pose much anymore because the midsections are too big. But that seemed to be a favorite of Steve's. Here's a back shot. Getting into television and movies here. (1950) Mr. Universe. Teenager. Working the abs, I suppose. Muscle Beach area. Look at the cars in the background. Must have been in the mid to late 40s. Hills of Oakland. Great picture there. Love that. I mean, you know, when you see that physique, you just kind of takes your breath away, you know, because it's just incredible. The symmetry, the flowing lines, elegance, you know, the limb length. He just hit the jackpot with his genetics, with his height, leg length, muscle bellies, you know, the fullness in the thighs, the quads here, calves, I mean, just everything. It's just incredible. And then being a good-looking guy, it's just the cherry on top. Another back pose. In another video I showed you a framed photo that I have. I think it's the original of this picture right here. Here is the Mr. America, Alan Stephan, always smiling. Love that guy. Walking down the street, getting ready to go play Hercules. Mr. America era. And then here's the back cover. Well, I hope you enjoyed that, guys. This is a Steve Reeves poster book by Milton Timor Jr. and there's no date on it anywhere, but I'm guessing that it came out in the mid to late 70s because it predated the other books that Milton wrote. And as a bonus, we got to take a look at Steve's camera. I'm going to definitely take that in and see if I can find out more about it. Does it work? Etc. Alright guys, well I hope you guys have a great day. Make sure you share the video if you know of another Steve Reeves fan that might be interested. And subscribe. I got a lot more coming up. I'm a little overwhelmed with all the videos that I have planned, but I'm very active on Instagram. I also am on Twitter at Steve Reeves Herc, and of course on my YouTube page, Steve Reeves Hercules. We've got a nice community of Steve Reeves fan where we offer conversation back and forth, and there's personal stories that people are sharing from when they were growing up. Maybe they have a recollection of their dad or their grandfather, a Steve Reeves story, how much Steve inspired them. And you know, Steve was about being fit for life, and that's one of my main attractions, you know, to Steve Reeves and the life that he lived, because fitness was always at the forefront. The mental benefits, the physical benefits, and he just wanted to be the best that he could be. Alright guys, have a great day, and I will see you next time.